Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we're doing the 2023 Boxing Awards as we're going to look at the Contenders Win of the Year. Now before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So the Contenders Win of the Year, what does that mean? That basically means any non-title victory, including interim title fights, qualifies as a Contenders Win of the Year. So in interim title fights, those are not actual world titles. So for instance, Benavidez and Demetrius Andre, not a world title fight. That was an interim title fight, so that would count. And you might hear that one. Zhang and Joyce in their heavyweight interim title fight, not an actual title fight. That an interim title is basically a guarantee for a title shot. The only advantage over that in a mandatory challenger, that if you win, if you're the interim champion and a champion and the world champion gives up his title, you get upgraded to world champion without having to fight for the belt because you've already put yourself in that position as the interim champion. So that's the difference. But a contender, it's any Contenders Win. So from 122 all the way to heavyweight, I'm going to do at least 3 candidates in each division. And if a candidate was a finalist in my top 10 or top 12, then I will not discuss that fight when I get to when I'm going through that division. I'll wait until we talk about all the finalists. So let's jump into it. 122 pounds super bantamweight. The first candidate is Luis Nery versus Azat Havanassian, as they competed in an eliminator, a WBC final eliminator at 122 pounds. This fight is a finalist, so we're not going to talk about that right now. The next candidate is Sam Goodman and Rais Alim, who competed in an IBF final eliminator in June. This was not a finalist, so we'll talk about this one right now. Good fight. Alim came in. The odds-on favorite was undefeated, but it was in Australia, in Sam Goodman's country. Sam Goodman was coming off the biggest win of his career, upsetting former champion TJ Doheny. So a lot of people were interested in seeing how he would do against Alim. But Alim, good boxer, good punch. Most people were picking him to win this fight, myself included. And the first half of the fight was a good one. They were going back and forth. Alim seemed to be doing a little bit more. But in the second half of the fight, Sam Goodman put his foot on the gas pedal and just seemingly outworked Alim and took a close split decision as he became the mandatory challenger in the IBF. So that was a big Contenders Win right there for Goodman. And the next candidate was MJ Marajan Akhmadaliyev's 8th round TKO. Well, it was him versus undefeated Kevin Gonzalez. You know, this was a WBA final eliminator right here. MJ came in coming off that loss to Marlon Taplis, where he lost the unified title, and wanted to lock up a shot at the next undisputed champion, which was coming a couple weeks later between Inoue and Marlon Taplis, as they were fighting in late December. So MJ had a point to prove. He went out there and proved it, breaking down and stopping the undefeated Kevin Gonzalez in 8 rounds. So that was the third candidate. 126 featherweight. None of the wins here were finalists for me. The first one is Brandon Figueroa's 12-round unanimous decision over Mark Magsayo. This one was for the WBC interim title. Figueroa and Magsayo went at it. This was a good back-and-forth battle. They just really were throwing big bombs in there, landing good shots. Figueroa outworked Magsayo. It was a close decision, but it was deserving. It actually wasn't close on the judges' scorecards, but it should have been ruled close. But I didn't have a problem with Figueroa winning, but it was a big deal. The winner was becoming interim champion to get the shot at Ray Vargas, the champion, next. So this was a big fight. Good win for Figueroa. Next was Nick Ball versus Isaac Dogbe. This one, Dogbe was the former champ coming in. You know, was coming off of earlier in the year where he had lost to Robeisy Ramirez for the vacant WBO title, but was competitive during that fight, even though he lost a clean decision. Nick Ball hadn't really done much yet. He was undefeated, but he hadn't really done much, and he went out there and completely outboxed and outclassed Dogbe to earn a very good, solid decision win and put himself in the serious mix at 126. So it was a good win right there. And actually, he became the WBC's #1 contender with that win. And then finally, the third candidate was Rhea Abe's 12-round unanimous decision over Kiko Martinez, over former 2-division champ Kiko Martinez. Rhea Abe of Japan hadn't really done much to this point. He was taking on Martinez, who was the IBF champion the year before and lost it to Josh Warrington. So he wasn't too far out. Martinez, a former 2-division champ. And Abe went out there and outworked him and outclassed him over 12 rounds to a unanimous decision. It made him the IBF's #1 contender. And he's actually cashing in on that in March when he challenges Luis Alberto Lopez for the IBF title. So that was a very significant win. The best at 126, because none of them were finalists, goes to Figueroa's win over Magsayo. And a side note for the Contenders Win of the Year in 2022, that was Sebastian Fundora's 9th round TKO victory over Erickson Lubin as they competed for the WBC interim super welterweight title at 154. 130 super featherweight. Two candidates here. Neither of them were finalists. First is Oscar Valdez's 10-round unanimous decision win over Adam Lopez in their rematch. Nothing really to speak of here. This wasn't a big-time fight. This was basically a stay-busy fight. Valdez did have to win it, though, to get his showdown with Emmanuel Navarrete. He went out there and outworked Adam Lopez over 10 rounds, not surprisingly, on the Lomachenko-Haney undercard, and put him and got his shot against Navarrete following the victory. So a decent win here in their rematch. And then the other candidate was Jordan Gill's 3rd round TKO over Michael Conlon. Conlon was coming up from 126 following a knockout loss to Luis Alberto Lopez. He was making his debut at 130, and Jordan Gill was just seen as a powder puff cupcake type of fight for him to get ready. And Jordan Gill went out there and wasted Michael Conlon, stopped him in 3 rounds, decisive victory, and put himself in the mix. And now he's getting a crack at Zelfa Barrett next in April. So that definitely led to something big. Contenders Win of the Year, I mean, you could go either way at 130 between Valdez or Gill. I'll give it to Gill. 135 lightweight, only got one contender, and that was Raymond Muratala's 2nd round TKO over Jeremiah Nakatila. This one, Nakatila had got his biggest win of his career the year before when he stopped Miguel Burchell in his lightweight debut. So Nakatila was really, in the serious mix. He was ranked in the top 10, and everybody knew he was going to get a crack at something eventually. And on the Haney-Lomachenko undercard, he would challenge undefeated Raymond Muratala. But most people didn't feel Muratala was ready for that next level. And he went out there and fucking wasted Nakatila. Knocked him out in only 2 rounds, impressively. Big win for Muratala. Almost was a finalist right here, but didn't quite make the cut. 140, I got 4 candidates. First off was Jose Ramirez's 11th round knockout victory of Richard Comey. Just a good, solid action fight right here. Ramirez was trying to bounce back in 2023 after not fighting for a year. He just grinded out this victory over an always game former lightweight champ Richard Comey, who kept throwing even though he was losing the fight. He was competitive, kept landing shots. Every time he thought he was done, he battled back, but eventually succumbed to the size and youth of Ramirez being stopped in the 11th round. Next is Arnold Barbosa's 10-round unanimous decision over Jose Pedraza. I actually picked Pedraza in this fight to win because Barbosa hadn't really done anything yet. And Barbosa went out there and pretty much kicked Pedraza's ass. He outworked him, outclassed him over 10 rounds. Clean unanimous decision right here. It made him the WBO's #1 contender. This was a good win. Next is Gervonta Davis's 7th round knockout of Ryan Garcia in their big super fight that took place at a catchweight of 136. This was a finalist, so we're not going to discuss this one right now. And the final candidate at 140 was Richardson Hitchens, 10-round unanimous decision over former three-time world title challenger Jose Zepeda. Richardson Hitchens was undefeated coming into this fight. Zepeda had won one fight since his knockout loss to Regis Prograis, and a lot of people wanted to see if Hitchens had what it took to be on that next level. And he went out there and just cleanly outboxed and outclassed Jose Zepeda. It was kind of an uneventful, but it was a clean one-sided victory as Hitchens put himself in the serious mix. And now he's actually competing in a final eliminator to get a world title shot in his next fight. So that should be interesting. 147 welterweight. I got 4 candidates there as well. First is the Jaron Boots Ennis, his 10th round knockout of Romain Villa, as he would retain the IBF interim welterweight title. Heading into this one, it was in July. A lot of people just wanted to see Boots back in action. Romain Villa was an underdog, but he had pulled off the upset over Rashidi Ellis in January. And, a lot of people wanted to see the tough Colombian challenge Boots Ennis, and Boots Ennis just broke him down. A clean job of boxing and punching and landing good hard shots and just breaking down Romain Villa and stopping him in 10 rounds impressively as he retained his interim world title, and which led to him being upgraded to world champion once the IBF stripped Terence Crawford a few months later. Next was Giovanni Santillan's 6th round knockout of Alexis Rocha. This was a big win right here for Giovanni Santillan. He came in a clear underdog against Rocha, who was the WBO's #1 ranked contender at the time. And most people were looking at this fight as a stay busy fight. Now, I picked Rocha, but I did tell everybody Santillan has never tasted defeat. He's hungry. He wants this fight. And he went out there and beat the shit out of Alexis Rocha. Good, solid-ass win, and it made him the WBO's #1 ranked contender. And if Bud Crawford gives up his belts, Giovanni Santillan's going to compete for the vacant WBO title next. So that's what this victory meant. Big-time win for him. Next was Mario Barrios, his 12-round unanimous decision over Yordenis Ugas to become the WBC interim welterweight champion. Barrios came in a clear underdog in this fight. Ugas was a year-and-a-half removed from his beatdown loss to Errol Spence Jr., but most people felt that he was going to outwork and outsmart the younger and bigger Barrios, and Barrios just used his youth and size to wear down and outwork the fading former world champion Ugas. It was on the Canelo Charlo undercard, so it was an impactful win on a big card. He won by a clean decision and became the interim champion. And a lot of people are talking that Barrios and Boots Ennis could be colliding in a unification bout, or at least for Boots' world title next. Again, it could be unification if Terence Crawford gives up his welterweight titles, then Barrios upgrades the world champion. So the victory over Ugas has went a long way for Mario Barrios. And then finally, Cody Crowley, his 12-round unanimous decision over Abel Ramos. This was a good one right here. Crowley was 9 months removed from his father committing suicide, so he was coming into this fight really with a heavy heart, very emotional, but wanting to prove himself and put himself in that serious mix. And he had to work hard against the very tough Abel Ramos, but he did outwork him over 12, a 12-round majority decision here, close fight, but it put Crowley in the serious mix. He's actually highly ranked in the WBC, the IBF, the WBO. He passed on an IBF mandatory fight in a final eliminator, but he's in line either for the WBC title or the WBO title, and I really think he could be fighting Giovanni Santillan for the vacant WBO belt once Crawford makes his decision to move up. You know, but he might be waiting around, but he definitely put himself in position for a title shot with the win over Ramos. But the win of the year, the Contenders Win of the Year, tough to say, but I got to go with Ugas's victory over Mario Barrios as the welterweight Contenders Win of the Year. None of them made the were finalists, so we can't really call the, you know, none of them are finalists, so we can announce what the best in the division was. 154 super welterweight, we had another 4 candidates. First was Tim Tszyu's 9th round TKO victory over Tony Harrison to capture the vacant WBO interim title. You know, Tszyu was coming in, hadn't proved on that top tier level yet, and most people wanted to see him, and he went in against the veteran former champ Harrison, who some people thought were going to beat him, myself included, and Tim Tszyu dominated Tony Harrison, stopping him in 9 rounds impressively to capture the WBO interim title, which led to him being upgraded later in the year to full champion, and now he is the reigning WBO champ. So that was a big-time win for Tim Tszyu, the biggest of his career thus far. Next was Brian Mendoza's 7th round. Actually, that was supposed to be a finalist, so we'll talk about that again later. Then it's Brian Mendoza's 7th round knockout of Sebastian Fundora. That's a finalist. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Next was Erickson Lubin's 12-round unanimous decision over Jesus Ramos. Was an uneventful and somewhat controversial win, but it was a meaningful one. It was on the Canelo Charlo undercard. It was on a big card. A lot of people thought this fight was going to steal the show. It ended up not being a great fight, but Lubin got out of there with a 12-round decision win in a controversial fight, because there was a lot of people that thought Ramos won, but it was a close fight. It wasn't a highly eventful fight that people thought it was going to be, but Lubin walked away with a clean win, and that could lead to bigger things in 2024 for him. And then the last one was Yoenis Tellez, his 3rd round TKO over Sergio Garcia. Yoenis Tellez, an undefeated fighter on the rise, only a handful of fights on his resume, and he went in against Sergio Garcia, who hadn't, you know, his biggest fights were losses to Tony Harrison and to Sebastian Fundora, but he gave Fundora hell, and a lot of people thought he was overlooking Harrison, and Harrison outboxed him. So going in against the young Tellez, nobody knew what they were going to see, and Tellez blasted Garcia, stopping him in 3 rounds. So that was impressive. 160, we got 3 candidates. First is Chris Eubanks' 10th round TKO win over Liam Smith in their rematch. That is a finalist. We'll get to that later. Next was Liam Smith's 4th round TKO of Chris Eubank Jr. in their first fight. This one, Eubank came in the favorite. Liam Smith was moving up to 160. Most people felt Chris Eubank was going to win this fight, and they definitely didn't think he was going to lose by a 4th round knockout, as he really had never even been hurt in his career and always packed a great chin. And Liam Smith just blasted Eubank out in 4 rounds impressively to really put his name high at 160 middleweight. So big win for Liam Smith. And then the 3rd candidate was Carlos Adamaz's 9th round TKO win over Julian J. Rock Williams, the former unified junior middleweight champ. This one, Adames was retained the WBC interim title, but he was just, this was considered like a stay busy fight, and J-Rock was in it. He was competing. Adames was winning the fight, but J-Rock was very much in it, was landing good shots, and Adames stunned him in the 9th, jumped on him. The referee might have jumped in a little premature. I do agree with that, but I really believe Adames was going to stop J-Rock. So it was a good, solid win for him. Faced a little adversity, but he stayed busy with the win. So that's the 3rd candidate. 168, we got 3. First is David Benavidez, his 6th round TKO of Demetrius Andrade. That's a finalist. We'll discuss that in a little bit. Next was David Benavidez's 12 round unanimous decision over Caleb Plant. That is also a finalist. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And the 3rd candidate was Jaime Munguia's 12 round unanimous decision over Sergey Derevyanchenko. Most people thought Munguia should have won this fight more decisively, but he ended up being in a war against a game older former world title challenger and veteran and Derevyanchenko. Good back and forth action. Munguia sealed it with his knockdown, with the knockdown of Derevyanchenko in the 12th round. He sealed it, and honestly, it led to his recent big time fight with John Ryder. So a hard fought victory for Munguia here. Fight of the year candidate, was a good one. 175 light heavyweight. There's only one candidate. It goes to Michael Eifert's 12-round unanimous decision over Jean Pascal, the former champ. This one, Pascal came in a favorite because nobody had really heard of Michael Eifert. You know, and it was an IBF final eliminator, and most people were paying attention because they were, you know, at 40, Pascal was about to get another world title shot. But Michael Eifert ruined that by completely outboxing Jean Pascal over 12 rounds cleanly and becoming the IBF's mandatory challenger. So that was a big win for Eifert. 200 cruiserweight, there's two candidates. First was Richard Riakporhe's 4th round TKO of former champion Krzysztof Glowacki. No surprise, because Riakporhe had really kind of bolstered into the mix, especially once Chris Billum-Smith stopped Lawrence Okoli. Riakporhe handed Billum-Smith his only loss, so that gave him more of a name in the UK. But just to beat a former champion really made a statement, and stop him like this really made a statement for Riakporhe. The other candidate was Gilberto Ramirez's 10-round unanimous decision over Joe Smith Jr. In their cruiserweight contest. They were both making their cruiserweight debut at this fight, but they were both coming off of losses in their previous bout in world title fights as well. So people, you know, Ramirez was the favorite, but Joe Smith, most people thought because of his punching power at 175 that he was going to carry it up, and he did. It was a good action fight, but Ramirez cleanly outworked him to a 10-round decision, and it's leading to a world title shot in his next fight, as he's challenging WBA champ Arsen Goulamirian. And now at heavyweight, actually had 4 candidates there. First was Anthony Joshua's 5th round TKO of Otto Wallin. This one, you know, was a big deal because Wallin was a guy that people avoided since the Tyson Fury fight. He gave Tyson Fury problems when they fought back in 2019. So he was widely avoided since then, a southpaw boxer. And Anthony Joshua chose him as his opponent for the Day of Reckoning card. And a lot of people thought it was a mistake because Otto Wallin could give Joshua problems and ruin the Joshua Wilder potential showdown that was supposed to take place in March. And Anthony Joshua, after Wilder got upset against Joseph Parker, you know, you could say really didn't have that big fight to look forward to. And he went out there and had one of the best performances of his career, at least since his dominant reign as champion, since before the loss to Andy Ruiz. And he dominated Otto Wallin, breaking him down, beating him up, stopped him in 5 rounds impressively. And now that's led to the Francis Ngannou showdown and could lead to a title shot later on. So Anthony Joshua really recaptured his old form with that victory. And the next candidate was Zhilei Zhang, 6th round TKO over Joe Joyce. This is a finalist for the WBO interim title. This is a finalist. We'll discuss this in a little bit. Next candidate was Zhilei Zhang's 3rd round knockout of Joe Joyce to retain the WBO interim title. This was also a finalist. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And the final candidate at heavyweight was Joseph Parker's 12-round unanimous decision over Deontay Wilder. This was a finalist as well, so we'll discuss that in a little bit. So now let's look at our top 10 finalists, and from 10 to 1, let's jump right into it. And again, if you want a definition of a Contenders Win of the Year, last year, 2022, it was Sebastian Fundora's 9th round TKO victory over Erickson Lubin to either retain or capture the WBC interim super welterweight title at 154. All-out war, traded knockdowns, and Fundora got a big-time win that he needed. against a good, serious contender. So that was last year's biggest Contenders win of the year. But 10-1, here we go. Number 10, Tim Tszyu's 9th round TKO over Tony Harrison. This was just a good, solid win for Tim Tszyu. He needed to prove himself. He captured the WBO interim title with the victory. A lot of people were viewing this as a 50-50 fight because of Tony Harrison's dominant performance against Sergio Garcia the year prior. And Tim Tszyu just went out there and blasted Tony Harrison, dominated him over 9 rounds, stopping him impressively, and that led to him becoming world champion. So that's number 10. Number 9 goes to Luis Nery's 11th round knockout of Azat Hovhannissian. Nery came in a former 2-division champ, but a lot of people were surprised that he picked this fight as a final eliminator because Azat Hovhannissian was the boogeyman of 122 for years. Nobody had wanted to give him a title shot since he gave Ray Vargas hell back in 2017, 2018. And Nery came in and signed on for a final eliminator. And I was like, whoa, this is going to be interesting. I picked Hovhannissian to beat and knock out Nery. And it was a good, hard-ass fight between both of them. Nery had won. It seemed to be the winner after 5 or 6 rounds. And then Hovhannissian closed the gap over the next 5 or 6 rounds. And heading into the 11th, he had really stolen the momentum. And a lot of people thought he was going to win this fight by knockout. And Nery caught him with a wicked left hand and stopped Hovhannissian in the 11th to become the WBC's mandatory challenger. And now look at what it's led to. A monster undisputed title shot with the monster Naoya Inoue. That fight will take place in May of this year. So big time victory right there for Nery. Number 8 goes to Chris Eubank Jr.'s 10th round TKO win over Liam Smith in their rematch. This one was just a good, solid performance. Eubank was coming off that 4th round TKO loss, and people were surprised. So a lot of people thought Eubank's heart was out of it, but he brought on Terrence Crawford's trainer, Bomac, and he absolutely outboxed, outclassed, dropped Liam Smith a couple times, and finished him in the 10th round impressively to gain his revenge and throw himself right back at the top of the wide open middleweight division. It could lead to a title shot against Janibek if he wants it. We'll see, but that was a big time win. Number 7 goes to Zhilei Zhang's 6th round TKO victory over Joe Joyce to capture the WBO interim heavyweight title. This one was in April. Joe Joyce was the juggernaut, was undefeated. He was the most, in my opinion, the boogeyman of the heavyweight division. And Zhilei Zhang came in, a 40-year-old heavyweight, hadn't really done much, and was widely viewed as a stay-busy opponent for Joe Joyce. And Zhang swelled up Joyce's right eye early and just teed off on him, landing that big left, broke him down, and after 6 was awarded the TKO victory and captured the WBO interim heavyweight title with a major upset right there. Big time win for Zhilei Zhang. Number 6 was is Brian Mendoza's 7th round knockout of Sebastian Fundora. This was a huge victory. He was getting beaten every minute of every round of this fight, but was landing punches here and there. But Fundora this was a flat out just stay busy opponent. Mendoza hadn't really done anything. And then in the 7th round, a blitzing left hand and then straight right as Fundora was already falling, that just flattened Sebastian Fundora as Brian Mendoza captured the WBC interim title with this major upset. And it led to a title shot against Tim Tszyu later in the year. So this was a big time victory for Brian Mendoza. Number 5 goes to David Benavidez for his 12th round unanimous decision over Caleb Plant to retain the WBC interim super middleweight title at 168. You know, Benavidez, a former champ, was undefeated, was battling a fellow former champ, Caleb Plant, and really this was Benavidez proving that he belonged in the Canelo mix. He had been talking about Canelo. He was widely viewed as being the next big thing, but he hadn't done it against a serious and legitimate contender yet. You know, his 2 victories prior over Ronald Gavril to capture the vacant WBC title early in his career, and then beating Anthony Durrell were impressive, but it didn't prove that he was there yet. The win over Plant would do that. Competitive after 6, and then he took over in the second half of the fight and just beat up and bloodied Plant, stopping or scoring the 12-round decision and really putting his name, you know, up there as the top dog or the top challenger to Canelo in the undisputed title, putting himself right there. That was a big win. Number 4, I gave it to Joseph Parker's 12-round unanimous decision over Deontay Wilder. Parker came in a big-time underdog. Wilder's power was, you know, it is insane, and people were wondering if Parker would last even out of the first couple rounds. And not only did he do that, he completely neutralized Wilder's power and outworked him over 12 rounds. And there were one-sided rounds, even hurt Wilder a couple times, and just won a clear-cut shutout unanimous decision in this one, in a fight where he ruined the Joshua Wilder fight that was supposed to take place in March. Nobody was giving Parker a chance in this one, and he went out there and blitzed Wilder. Very good performance. Number 3, I got to give it to Tank Davis' 7th-round TKO win over Ryan Garcia. Just because of the significance of how big this fight was, but I still call bullshit on Tank for the 2 weight clause things that he put on Ryan. Having him come down to 136 to me, after, and not just saying, hey, come down to 135 and challenge me for my secondary belt, that showed fear right there, especially after he'd already competed at 140. But then to put the second set of handcuffs on him by saying, hey, you can't weigh more than 10 pounds either the night of the fight. If you would have done one or the other, I would have been okay with that. But to do both, it really affected the fight. But I can't take away from the fact that it was a big victory and a significant win in boxing. I just didn't like the double set of handcuffs he put on Ryan with the weight issues. But that's number 3. If he didn't do all that, it probably finishes number 1, to be honest. Number 2, though, goes to Zhilei Zhang's 3rd-round knockout of Joe Joyce in their rematch to retain the WBO interim heavyweight title. He blasted Joyce in this one. People were wondering if his first win was a fluke, if Joyce's eye just swelled up too early and that cost him the battle. Zhilei Zhang left no doubt in the rematch, retaining his WBO interim title, destroying Joe Joyce, knocking him out in only 3 rounds. That was huge. It was significant, and I was really impressed with that victory. And now, you know, and now it's going to lead to the Joseph Parker showdown, which Zhang's the favorite, and it could lead to a bigger fight down the road. So, big time win for him. But number 1, the Contenders Win of the Year in boxing, in my opinion, goes to David Benavidez for his 6th-round destruction of Demetrius Andrade to retain the WBC interim super middleweight title at 168. I mean, you know, Benavidez came in the clear favorite, but Andrade, people wanted to see how good he really was. He was undefeated, and, you know, he had been calling out Canelo for years, but hadn't really fought anybody. So going into this one, people were wondering if Benavidez was going to get cleanly outboxed against the southpaw boxer and mover in Andrade. And Andrade, yes, he made a mistake trying to go toe-to-toe with Andrade and slug it out even a little bit, but I don't think it would have mattered. Even if he would have boxed and stayed away, I think Andrade maybe stops him a few rounds later. But Andrade's size and his youth and his punch output just broke down Andrade and impressively stopped him, dominated him, and left no doubt that he deserves Canelo next. And so my Contenders Win of the Year goes to David Benavidez over Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade at 168 pounds. 6th-round TKO. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This was the Contenders Win of the Year as my 2023 boxing awards continue. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.